Hello, hello. Hello, everyone. It's Amanda Testa here with Find Your Feminine Fire. And today I have the pleasure of interviewing the magnificent Lauren Joyce.
Yeah.
Lauren is a sex and relationship coach and founder of the Magnetic Woman. And she helps leaders, influencers, and ambitious women connect to their feminine, feel sexy, and create epic partnerships. She also has an amazing background in communication and psychology that she combines with years of work on the subjects of femininity and the feminine and 600-hour coaching certification through the Tantric Institute of Integrated Sexuality. So really, she's got so many great tools that she combines to bring out the best in her clients. So thank you so much for being here, Lauren. I'm so glad to have you.
Thanks for having me, Minna. I'm so honored and excited to be here with you and with your audience today.
Yes. And so what I want to start with, I love to find out just, a little bit about your journey and kind of what led you to this work.
Yeah, great question. Um, unlike, I don't know what you may see in my videos or photos, I have not always been magnetic, nor have I ever really been, nor was I really proud of like being a woman or my femininity. I was raised Catholic and went to Catholic school. So I was such a good student. I really took on that shame and guilt around being a woman. And I really was under the impression that living like your best life meant pushing, succeeding, being intelligent, right? Being like the nice girl, not making waves, like, assuming that I was gonna like get married in my early 20s and have kids and like live that traditional life. And I get to high school and college. I don't really get a lot of attention from boys, mainly because I was so uncomfortable in my body. Um, I have a very curvaceous hourglass figure, which I got when I was like 14. And let me tell you, that's quite awkward when none of the other girls in class have gone through puberty. So I really lived under this belief system and messaging I got from home and from the world that like it wasn't okay to look how I looked and it was too much. It was like I was not enough in a lot of areas and I was too much in other areas. And so it just really took a hit to my confidence and to really my connection to myself. So I get through college, I have this great career. I assume, like, okay, this is my life. I'll dazzle men with my intelligence and my power and my success, and like, I will show them I am independent, like every other woman I had seen, right?
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
I was just like resigned to this was the path I was going to live on because guess what? I didn't know anything else. And then when I was 25, my dad died, and he was an amazing father. And I was really at such a loss and I was in such a state of grief and I had no idea how to deal with my emotions. Like I didn't know how to deal with my emotions prior to that. But then when you're hit with this like unimaginable loss, like I just remember within a month of him passing away, I went to a grief counselor and I was like, look, I don't know how it's possible, but I want this to make me a better person because I refuse to let this like derail my life. Now, of course, I assumed I would still be like going down the path I had thought I was on. But in all of that, I found a program that was focused on pleasure and living your best life as a woman. And so I'm like, okay, does this mean I get to eat chocolate cake every day and have permission? Because like that's pleasure, right? So I joined this program, Amanda. But what I found was permission to really connect to myself as a woman, right? Learn how to just deal with or navigate my emotions. But what really started to happen was I was getting in touch with my sensuality, with my sexuality that had been so repressed. And so not only was I like feeling better and navigating the world in a different way, men were responding to me so much different. Like before I couldn't get a date to save my life, I would spend hours like agonizing over what to say to men. It was just like a hot mess. And now I was the woman that I would walk in somewhere and three men would come up and ask me for my number. And at first I'm like, what the heck is going on? And then I realized the power that was held in a woman connecting to her sexuality, her sensuality, and really her femininity, like this part of us that is so repressed and cut out, our emotions, our creativity, our intuition. So the more I started to see the power it was having on me and how it was allowing me to navigate grief in a really healthy way, and in a way that allowed me to alchemize it and like actually propel myself forward versus like staying in a stagnant space. The way that it allowed me to connect with other women that I hadn't been able to before, the way it allowed me to connect to men, not just romantically, but in general. I knew I had to do something with this, like, and to like spread this to other women. And so I decided to become a coach. I left my former career because I love to travel. And so I wanted the freedom to travel and to work with women all over the world and to really create this impact. So that's the long and short of how we got to where we are right now.
Yes, that's a beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing it. And I'm sorry about your father.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
That's so inspiring, though, how you did, think to make it a positive thing,
Yeah.
And I love the pleasure part. So you found this course all about pleasure, learning to reconnect to your sensuality and yourself as a woman. And I just want to second that's so powerful. I feel it, for me, like when you were saying before and how you just were so uncomfortable in your skin, and then realizing, I think like you said, we're taught that so much coming along. It takes so much to kind of move past that.
Totally, totally. And I was raised Catholic, and my parents are Catholic and their parents are Catholic, and like I grew up in an area of Pittsburgh that was very Catholic, and it's like I look at now, especially all the work that I've done around sexuality and tantra and stuff, it's like I can see that the messages I was given as a young girl, especially as I was developing into a woman, were to try and keep me safe, right? It wasn't this like malicious messaging as much as it wasn't safe centuries ago to be a woman. And so, of course, that's what's passed down. And luckily for us and for all the women watching, that's not the environment that we live in anymore. Like, we do have so much more, as much as we're still fighting for freedoms and rights and equality on a lot of fronts, like we still have so much more freedom, independence, and power than we've ever had before. And I really think that the crux of it, and I would assume like that you probably agree, Amanda, but I feel like the crux of it is really owning your sexuality and your sexual power. That's, to me, what has helped me create really incredible boundaries in my life with people, with things, in relationships. That's what's allowed me to create such deep connection with a lot of people too. So
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So what would you say has been, one of the most profound things that you've implemented that kind of helped you on your journey when you first started?
In terms of what?
Well, I guess when you were talking about how kind of you first went into this kind of pleasure-focused part-time of your life.
Yeah.
And just maybe if you have like an example from that time period of what really helped you in that transition.
Yeah. So one of the biggest things for me at the beginning of that program was like, A, as a woman, it's natural to have desires, and B, like we're supposed to follow them. Right. And so I just remember sitting in this program, hating where I had been living, having no friends left there because, again, I was 25. My dad passed away. So imagine a bunch of 25-year-old peers who have never experienced anything. Like they had no idea how to like handle it. So unfortunately, at that point, a lot of them excused themselves from my life. So sitting there, hating where I was living, having this deep desire to travel more, not having friends, but I felt like, oh, I should stay where I'm living because I have a job or because blah, blah, blah. And so this idea that like I could desire things, that was natural to have these big grand desires, and then to follow them was not just natural, but like my right was groundbreaking. I remember within a month of the program, I packed up my stuff and I moved to Washington, D.C., which had been a dream of mine for a very long time. And so it was that permission that what was already occurring inside of me that I had been trying to push down because I had not seen other women doing that not only was it okay, it was natural, and I was supposed to be following those desires.
Yes.
That alone, and I know that feels minute, and it's not necessarily related to sexuality, but like that was so groundbreaking for me at the time.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. I mean, it's not something that we've ever been, at least I see, I was raised Southern Baptist, so not Catholic, but my husband was Catholic.
Yeah,
But, but similar in that you really are, it's kind of glorified to be a martyr, right?
totally.
You take care of everyone else's needs first. And then if there's anything left, you can maybe have a scrap.
Fingers crossed.
So I love how that, that permission is so huge. Like we do have this permission to follow our desires and it's okay. And it's actually very important to get clear on what those are. And it can help you come back to life.
For sure, for sure. And it's only when we follow our desires that we actually have more to give others, right? It's only when we put ourselves first, when we fill our cup and our tank first, that we have more to give to others and that we can be, I know you work with a lot of mothers and that's who's really in your community, that you can be a better mother, that you can be a better wife, that you can be a better partner, you can be a better friend. And it's so interesting, like when I talk to women who are mothers and when they're like questioning, like, well, I want to put myself first, but I have all this guilt and I'm not a mother, so I don't really get the mom guilt. I'm innocent. My best friend is, and she's like, Lauren, it's a thing. I'm like, okay, I got it. But when I talk to women, I'm like, well, think about your mother, right? Like, and what she showed you. Don't you want to show your kids a different way? Like, don't you want to show your daughters that by valuing and honoring themselves first, like that's going to put them ahead? And don't you want to show your sons the model of a woman who values herself first, right? And so I think that that's also something to really remember. And the same goes for like single women who are like, well, no one else in my family has done X, Y, and Z. And it's like, well, don't you want to be that model and break that chain, like break that lineage? So
Yes.
yeah.
And I would love to kind of segue into a little bit. So when you're talking about being this new model, this breaking the chain, being this new, beautiful, magnificent, magnetic woman.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of what led you to be why do you pick the word magnetic? It's a great word.
Thanks. So it's so funny how this happened, Amanda. As I said, the more I started uncovering and discovering and connecting to my sensuality and my sexuality, I started to see how men responded to me. It was very, very different. And I used to be a language translator and I have background in psychology. So I've always been fascinated with how people communicate. And so once I started to see that men were like more attracted to me, but I hadn't really changed physically, I started to really look at like, what's the basis of male-female communication? Because I feel like there's some, like the more I learned about qualities of the feminine, I'm like, okay, learning about qualities of the masculine, they're very different. Therefore, I bet communication's different. So I started reading a lot of like David Data and Alison Armstrong and Pat Allen and like really steeping myself in that. And I'm like, well, let me just practice this stuff, right? And then it became this thing where anywhere I went, I was getting asked out. I would get asked out after a hot yoga class at 7 a.m. in Starbucks. You know what I mean? One time I was flying somewhere. I had gone out the night before. Okay, maybe not the best move. And I don't even drink that much, right? But I had just like gone out dancing, come home at 2 a.m., had to be up 3:30 for a flight, go to the airport on like an hour of sleep. And I was asked out 3 times before I got to the gate, right? So I'm like, okay, it's obviously the essence, but it's also the openness of my energy to men. Right. And as I mentioned, you know, my dad was this amazing man. And so I know I'm very, very fortunate, but I was raised in a mindset and in a belief system that like men want to make women happy and that not all men need to be feared. And I know that that's not everyone's reality. And I get that, right? But what I've seen like with the work that I do with my clients and in my community is when women really learn to love and appreciate who men are, know that of course there's bad, malicious men out there. There's bad, malicious women out there too, right? But as a whole, like when you can really just like love the difference that men bring to the table, that's like men are so drawn to that. They're so starved for that acknowledgement. And so anyways, I was out one evening because I love to go dancing. I was out dancing and this guy comes over to me and he's like, I remember you. You were here 2 months ago. This is what you were wearing and you're so beautiful. And I wanted to come talk to you, but I was so afraid and blah, blah, blah. And I let this guy go on and on and on. And I still have this day to not told him this. I've never seen him again, but we went to high school together. He does not, Amanda. Like, there was like no recognition of like us being in high school together or having the same friends. But from 2 months before, he could tell me what I was wearing, where I was standing, how long I had been there. So that I was like, you know, advertising something. And I was like, if you want to know how to be magnetic, that was just the word that came to mind. And then it was like, that's what it is. Like, it's this feeling, this power that I feel as a woman where I know I can walk in any room and get whatever I want. Not just from men, but from life in general. And it's easy. And I feel like it comes to me. I'm not in this push mode anymore. I'm not in this, like, I got to pound the pavement and make it happen. And so I was like, that's it. It's magnetism. Like, it's this drawing in. And my brand just took off from there, like, once I started talking about it more, because it was so resonant with a lot of women.
I love that. The drawing.
Yes.
So what you said would be some of your top tips to be more magnetic? So
the first thing is magnetism, as with anything else, always comes down to the relationship between you and you, right? So I know when I'm overworked, overexerted, as extroverted as I am, I need a lot of alone time too. Like, if I don't have enough alone time, if I'm not up on my self-care, I'm not being magnetic. Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm still getting asked out on dates and stuff, but I'm like not clear on my desires. I'm not feeling really in my body. I'm not able to gauge, like, is this guy a yes or a no? Because I'm like, I'm so tired. I don't know. Right? So my first tip is always looking at how you're taking care of yourself, always looking at how full your tank is. And I know that, like, with moms and with a lot of my clients who are really ambitious, successful women, like, one of the biggest issues is time. They're like, how do I find time to take care of myself? But what I've taught my clients is when you inject little pieces during the day, like set an alarm every other hour for 5 minutes, do a dance break like 3 times a day, like schedule it if you have to. And that doesn't mean that you're not being magnetic or that you're not like doing it enough, because you're going to start to fill your tank so much that it's going to become habit. But a lot of this stuff we're not taught. A lot of this stuff is not ingrained in our culture, so it's not habitual yet. So it's like, you don't know what you don't know. And once you start to learn it, just know that it's like a new language. It's a new habit that you have to incorporate. So that's the first thing, to be magnetic. The second thing, which is kind of coupled with that, is like really honoring your own beauty and your own sensuality. So for me, I love doing my hair and makeup. Like, I could go to Sephora every other day and buy and be like so blissed out of my mind. Like, I'll just go in there sometimes and test out new products and then leave. Like, I don't even need anything. I just love makeup. And so for me, what makes me feel amazing every single day is putting on some makeup and doing my hair. Not because I feel like this is the standard of beauty and I must look a certain way. It's like, no, I just feel more confident, more myself. So whatever that looks like for you, whatever your version is of that. And then also really making sure that you're connected to your own sensuality. So like, I add cinnamon to my coffee every morning, and I just sit with the coffee and I like feel it and smell it and drink it while I journal, right? So having that time for myself, that connection, but then also incorporating sensuality, which instantly brings you into the present moment, instantly brings you into your body. So those are the two like things for your connection to yourself and yourself. But then my other biggest tip around magnetism when it comes to men is appreciation, appreciation. Oh, and appreciation. And this is something I've heard from any and every like relationship communication person I've ever studied or read or anything, but it's men want to make us happy. I get we all have our frustration, our angers, our hang-ups towards men, but at their core, they want to make us happy. And so when you can start to appreciate what men do for you, even if it's not necessarily what you want them to be doing for you, you want them to be doing something else, they're never going to do the other thing until you appreciate what they're already doing.
Yeah.
And the thing I love about men is they'll be like, you have to say thanks. You don't have to say thanks. Like, it's fine. But like in their heart, they're like, she sees me. She really sees me. And then he's going to be more drawn to show up and more drawn to make you even happier. And I always say, men want to make a happy woman happier. They do not want to make an angry woman happy.
I
So
love
those are
that.
my tips.
I think that's so important, the appreciation part, because it's so easy, especially in long-term relationships, to have like these little things that may drive you crazy. And it's easy to pick and pick. That criticism is like going to shut them down faster than anything.
Totally. But this is the thing, Amanda, like we as women, we're taught to criticize ourselves, right? Like
Yeah.
culturally, like from our mothers, right? That's the paradigm we've been raised under, is that there's a standard of perfection, which, we'll never compare to because we're either too much or too little, or not enough, right? Choose your wording, but it's all the same.
Mm-hmm.
And so we grow up, and I've actually been training some of my friends who like haven't done some of the work that I've done, right? Where they'll say like, they're entrepreneurs. I love them, right? And they're like, we need to play a bigger game, and like we're showing up too small. And I go, you know what? I'm already like critical of myself enough. Like what I need in terms of this is like love and compassion. And that's what I've really been trying to show myself. So I think what happens too, Amanda, is that because we're so self-critical, and then that's how a lot of us will fuel ourselves into change. We assume that, okay, I criticize myself and I change. I'll criticize him and he'll change. And instead he's like shut down, wants nothing to do with it, and like retracts.
Yeah. So what are some tips you could say for when those moments when you really want to criticize? How do you focus on the appreciation?
So I would say like do the work too, right? The inner work, and see why do you want to criticize that one thing? But what I teach my clients is like feminine communication in the way where, so there's two ways to go about this. One is if there's something that is really bothering you, I'm not saying to abandon your emotions and like, can you give me a tangible example of something?
Well, let me just think. Okay, so maybe let's see. Maybe they don't put their dishes in the sink ever, or their dishes in the dishwasher ever, and they leave them in the sink, which is like 2 steps away from the dishwasher.
Totally. Okay, great. Thanks. I work best with tangible examples.
Yes,
And I would have made one up, but I thought maybe, have a good one. Okay, so let's say him not doing the dishes, right? Like you hate when the house is cluttered, when the kitchen's messy, like you feel so overwhelmed, you can't do your work, like whatever it is. I'm not saying, oh, he does it again, and you're like, thanks for not putting the dishes in the dishwasher.
Right.
Or like, oh God, thanks for wearing that shirt I bought you. That's so nice, right? Like, don't disown your emotion or your annoyance. But what I would say is, what I teach my clients is like, hey, babe, I know you have a lot going on, right? Like acknowledge him for something. Like, and I so appreciate how you brought dinner home for all of us tonight. When the dishes are not put away in the dishwasher, I feel overwhelmed and scattered and like I can't be present with you. So you also want to tell him what his actions are doing to you. Mm-hmm. But you have to take complete ownership. You can't be like, you not doing that makes the house a mess and whatever. It's like, no, I feel overwhelmed because I like to have things in this certain order. Could you please try to remember, or like, what can we do? Should we put up a sign? Like, what would work so that we could just put the dishes in the dishwasher? Because then I will be so much happier every single night, right? Yeah. And he's going to be like, done, happy, great. I'll put these in the dishwasher. So again, you want to be able to communicate why you're annoyed, but you want to take complete ownership of your emotions. So when you're not an annoyance, or he does something, like even just thanking him for things he does on a regular basis. Like, thank you so much for taking the dogs out every single day after work so I don't have to do it. I so appreciate that. Yeah. And he'll probably be like, well, of course, the dogs need taken out. But on the inside, he's going to feel more seen and approved of.
I think that is so powerful. I know even the other night, my husband came home, and I just know he's been stressed lately. So when he came in, like I was right there at the door and like gave him my attention and my presence and a kiss. And like, I appreciate so much that you work so hard for us. I appreciate so much that you come home to us every night. I appreciate so much all you do for our family. And like, he was so lit up.
Yeah.
And later that night, he was like, that was like one of the best things I ever walked into. Because a lot of times when they come home, and sometimes that's the case, like you're busy, you're cooking dinner, the kid's screaming, you're like, all right, your turn. But like taking those moments to just like acknowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a great reminder to do that more often. So thank you.
And when a man, hi Lorna, when a man feels appreciated, he's going to be more compelled to like cherish you, adore you, and give you more than if he doesn't feel seen and appreciated. Yeah. So it's very interesting. And I find a lot of women are like, well, I want him to step up. Like once he steps up, I'll start appreciating. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that's not how it works. You have to be the one to appreciate more before he steps up.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think that's true. And I actually know a lot of my clients struggle with feeling like they're doing so much and their partner's not doing anything. But just, I feel like what you mentioned earlier, and just reaffirming that the more you take care of yourself first and you really get full and feel like you can meet your own needs and need, are less needy from their perspective, then that eventually does shift things a lot of the time.
yeah, and I often will tell my clients, like, okay, you feel like you're doing a lot. That's great. I have no doubt that your man also thinks he's doing a lot. So you should ask him what he's doing to support you. And frame it in the way of, I have a feeling I'm not even seeing all the ways that you're trying to support me right now. And so I'd love to know, like, what do you, and you can't do it like in a condescending, annoyed way, but like really coming from a place of curiosity. I'd love to know what you're doing, in the effort to support me so that I can acknowledge it and appreciate it. Because what I find often is like a man will be like, oh, well, I took your car to get detailed, so you don't have to worry about it. And the woman's like, yeah, but I want you to tell me I'm going to be amazing in my business, right? So it's like they're both doing things that they think is supportive of the other person, but the other person has no idea that that's what's happening, right? So what I find is like definitely the appreciation, and then also asking, and figuring out, because you may be on like just two different frequencies, and he may be like, well, I take all the garbage out and I get your car detailed and I rake the leaves, and she's over here like, I just want you to hug me at the end of the night and tell me it's going to be okay. So of course she hasn't been appreciating anything he's done, and then he's over here like, what do you mean I'm not supportive? And like he has an entire list of things he's done, and so I think that can be a huge issue too.
Mm-hmm.
And vice versa. Like it goes the same. Like you may feel like, oh my gosh, she's so stressed and I'm being so supportive. And what he really wants is like an hour after work to just decompress. And you're just like, here's food and here's love and here's this, right? You're like, because I'm being supportive. And he's like, what I need for support is time alone. So
yeah, those discussions are so important.
Totally. Yeah.
And I think one of the things too that I hear from a lot of my clients, and we come up with ways to start these conversations so it doesn't feel like you're catching them off guard or like it's attacking. So how would you advise that they go about these conversations?
Yeah. So the thing to remember is that men are single focused. And so if they're focused on something, you come in and want to have this conversation, you're not going to get a good result. So either when he's done focusing on whatever he's focusing on, I even tell my clients to say like, hey, I want to have a conversation with you about XYZ. When would be a good time? Like set a freaking appointment, because, and vice versa. Like I, have been seeing this guy, and I get into my masculine, I run a business, right? And so I show up at his house the other day, and this was my mistake. I had been working till like the last second, and then I like stopped at the store and I get to his place, and he's like, what do you want for dinner? Where do you want to eat? And I was like, I don't know yet. Like, and you know what I mean? And he goes, okay, well, like whatever you want, just tell me and we can get food. And I'm like, I don't know yet. I needed time to like get back into my body. And so I had to say to him, like, I need like 15 minutes to just like relax and then I'll be able to tell you. So knowing what you need is really important and being able to say like, hey, I want to have this conversation with you. When would be a good time for you, right? Because, and we have that too, where we may be focused on the kids or like a kid came home sick from school and it's like, oh, I want to have this conversation with him, but all of my energy is towards like healing my child, right? So being more aware with each other about like, what do you need and when for yourself, and then being able to communicate that. So I always say like, it's okay to ask them when they want to talk about it and just say, hey, it's really important to me that we have this conversation. When would be good for you? Because then the man feels respected and like his time's honored, and that you're not just like, here are my emotions, fix them.
Right. And I think that's the problem that will happen is when you bring them up at, you know, at an opportune time, that's all they want to do is fix. I'm sure you've probably seen that video on YouTube with the woman with the arrow in her head.
No, but I can only imagine.
You know, and it's like, I've got a headache. And he's like, well, yeah, you need to pull the arrow out of your head. And she's like, you don't even listen to what I'm saying. Like, I just have so much pain in my head. And I just want you to just acknowledge that I have pain. He's like, pull the arrow out of your head.
Yeah.
You know, like they just want to solve it.
Completely accurate.
Which makes me laugh because it's easy to forget. But, you know, and we're only humans, so we can forgive ourselves in those moments. But I think I love the appreciation thing and finding more ways to do that.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, it's huge. It's so critical. I feel like the men in the service industry should be paying me commission, because I always tell every interview I do and all of my clients, I'm like, go practice on waiters and really appreciate them and love them up. Go practice on baristas. Like, really be getting commission from them, because I know these men are feeling so much better about their lives. But the reason why I always say that is, A, you have no attachment and therefore you have no baggage or anger towards these men.
Yeah.
And B, they're already in a position of being of service to you. So when you can really like practice that, the amount of free cookies and croissants I have gotten from baristas, I have been like, wow, thank you so much. Oh my gosh, I hope you're having an amazing day. This coffee is making my day. Like, whatever. They're just like, you want this food too? You want these other things? Like, how many things can I give you and make you happy with?
Yes.
So.
And I love how all the magnetic parts of you really come from activating that within yourself.
Totally.
And I think even for myself, when I first started doing this work, a part of me was, as I wanted to be better for my husband, right? Better in bed or whatever I thought originally I was getting into, which is so not the case. But in the end, of course, it makes you that way. But like you mentioned, I love how you say, you know, you really have to make sure your tank is full and that you know what you need so you can get those met and ask for what you need in a way that is, you know, non-confrontational. So you can get your needs met. And then, of course, you're going to have a lot more synergy in the bedroom.
For sure. And then, I mean, I would say like always making sure your tank is full, even when you, especially when you know you're going into situations like outside of your relationship that you don't really want to be in, right? Like I have to go, like I'll go to like, this just in the group, I'll go to family parties, right? Where I'm like, oh God, this is going to be okay, you know? And so I create like a whole, like, okay, I'm going to make sure I chat with some of my best girlfriends before and get like really excited and really like, you know, grounded in what I do and why I do it, so that when family members make weird comments about my current job, I'm not like, I make sure I feel really good. I look really good. I give myself permission to leave if I want to leave. And then I have like aftercare instructions where it's like, okay, great. I'm going to go take myself out to dinner and then come home and take a bath. And then I'm going to do this. And so I will pad situations that may feel triggering or, you know, that I'm just not excited about with self-care. And that also, I think, is so integral in keeping your tank full as a woman.
I love that.
Yeah.
Idea, padding those uncomfortable situations.
Hey, ladies, the holidays are coming up. Like, get ready.
Yes, it's time to double down the self-care stat.
Totally. Massages every other day. Yeah.
Yes. Well, Lauren has a magnificent group on Facebook called the Magnetic Woman Soiree. And she just did a really fun segment in there all about being an unforgettable lover. Oh, yeah. And I didn't know if there was anything fun from that you might want to share. There's so much good stuff, but if there's one thing in particular, then they can go to your group and find more.
Yeah. So I would say the biggest thing to remember is that men want to please you, and that not only that, but if you feel like you're not getting what you want in the bedroom, you have to look at what you're giving to yourself first. It's always everything
Yes.
is a mirror for your connection to yourself. So I'll get questions from women like, how do I get a guy to like do X, Y, and Z, or like be more open sexually or whatever? And it's like, well, you need to look at the least you have around your own sexuality. If you feel like you're with a guy who's not being open, like that may be the truth. And it may be that you have so much shame and guilt and you're afraid to really ask for what you want. So you want him to take the lead, but he's not taking the lead because he's picking up on your shame and guilt. And most good, like all good men are not going to push you in that way, you know?
Yeah.
And that if there's something that you want, again, if you come from a place of like being really grounded in yourself and loving and appreciating who and what the man is that you're with, you can ask for it. And know that they may get a little triggered because we've been raised in society to, men have been raised to believe that they have to be these sex gods that like descend down upon us without any training and without asking us what we want. You know what I mean? Like I have such a love and affection for men, and I'm just like, oh my God, the conditioning they get, it's really messed up too. So, you know, knowing that, and also knowing your own body and your own pleasure and your own sexuality so that you can say like, hey, I really like this and I really like that. Because here's the thing, men are single focused and they're so habitual. Like this worked, that's what I do.
Yeah.
Period. Right? So like if you're dating, I get this from women, and it's like, oh my God, like he does this thing and like I hate it. And it's like, well, it's probably because the woman before loved it. And in his mind, it's like, I do this, she is happy. And so take that and apply that to every single female. And it's like, no, not the case at all. But men don't have education around this stuff either. Like there's more and more stuff now, of course, but you know, they're taught that you're supposed to be this like macho guy who knows how to please a woman. And how are they taught? Through like porn and Hollywood, which is not female centric when it comes to pleasure or orgasm or climax. And so at the end of the day, men want to make you happy, but you need to know what that's going to take to be able to tell them in all areas.
Yes. All coming back down to you and knowing what makes you happy. That's
Totally
powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Yay. And let me ask you this. I love to ask people what their vision is. Like if you could have this magnificent vision for women and magically they would have this one aha and understand this one thing, what would that be for you?
That you're the prize. Like your radiance is a gift to the world, and especially to men. And that's all they want. That's all men want, is they want their woman to be radiant. They want their daughters to be radiant. They want to protect that radiance. You know what I mean? But that's all they want. And you are the gift. You're the prize.
Yes, you're the prize. Love that. Thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom with us today. And if you would, let me know where I can have people find you. And two, if anyone has questions, please feel free to post. And if we don't get to them now, we'll go back through and answer any questions that you may have. So please do ask away. And if you feel like other women could benefit, just invite them to share this video with them as well. And yeah, so where can we find you, Lauren?
Yeah, so you can hop on over to my Facebook group, the Magnetic Woman Soiree. So I constantly, whenever I do free trainings or have programs or anything like that, I always advertise about it in the group. And similar to Amanda, I'll do videos and deliver content there as well. So if you want more on magnetism and being magnetic, I feel like that's probably the best place to find me right now.
Beautiful. And I know you have some fun offerings coming up.
Yes. So I'm actually doing a training tomorrow night, which I can send you the link, Amanda. It's all about embodying your sexy magnetism. And I have a new mastermind that is starting in the beginning of January called Seductress. So those are very, very exciting. And yeah, like I said, in my group, I do tons of free content, and whenever I have trainings and stuff, I post it in there as well. So
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much again. And everybody check her out. She's awesome. I'll get that link from her to share her class tomorrow. And you can find all her offerings on her Facebook group.
Yay.
So thank you all for watching.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Lorna.